A lonely loser with a dead-end job dies of a heart attack, only to be reborn as the son of a noble with godlike powers. Ars was your average ugly office worker, living a boring life in Japan. Every day was the same: work, eat, sleep, repeat. But one day, on his way home, fate decided he'd had enough. A sudden heart attack ends his life instantly. The next moment, he opens his eyes, only to find himself in a completely different world. Lying on a soft bed, he stares at the face of a beautiful woman. For a second, he thinks he's in a hospital, until he spots something unbelievable: a flying dog casually floating around the room. A maid congratulates the blonde woman, and that's when Ars catches his reflection. He's been reincarnated as a baby. 3 years fly by. Ars quickly learns how to read and write, soaking up everything about this new world. He discovers that he lives in the Summerforth Kingdom, which was once divided into 7 nations until one conquered them all. He's born into a noble family that rules a small territory called Lamberg. Magic exists here too, something Ars finds absolutely thrilling. Unfortunately, he's still too young to learn it himself. His new life is one of pure luxury. A huge mansion, servants who cater to his every need, and a chef who whips up delicious meals every single day. But there's something unique about Ars. He possesses a mysterious ability no one else knows about. To test it, he heads down to the training grounds where the guards and aspiring soldiers train daily. Everyone greets him warmly. After all, he's the future lord of Lamberg. As he watches, he spots a man getting completely wrecked in a sparring match. Curious, Ars activates his special power, an ability that lets him see anyone's stats. He notices something odd. The man's spear and sword skills are trash, both D rank, but his archery skill is B rank. Ars rushes up and asks if he's ever tried using a bow. The guy laughs it off, saying archery's for cowards and women. But since Ars is technically his future boss, the man hesitantly obeys. He picks up a bow, aims, and fires. Bang! The arrow hits dead center. The crowd gasps. Thinking it's luck, he shoots again. Another bullseye. Again. Perfect, every time. Everyone's stunned. The man thanks Ars for the advice while others ask how he knew. Ars just smiles and says it was instinct. Of course, he doesn't mention his special ability. The only downside to his power? He can't see his own stats, which frustrates him a little. Later that evening at dinner, Ars sits across from his intimidating father, a battle-hardened noble. Curious, he checks his dad's stats, and nearly falls off his chair. All A-rank abilities across the board. The man's strong enough to defeat 10 elite swordsmen at once. His father asks about the soldier from earlier, and Ars admits he told him to try archery. The man nods approvingly, saying it's good for a future lord to recognize talent in others. From then on, Ars begins studying governance and leadership. But what he learns horrifies him. The rulers of the Summerforth Empire are deeply corrupt. The poor are starving, farmers are revolting, and the upper class uses violence and manipulation to stay in power. Basically, this world's politics are just as messed up as modern-day America. Ars realizes that if this continues, the entire continent will plunge into civil war. And as the future lord of Lamberg, he may be forced to lead soldiers into battle. The thought terrifies him. He's no warrior, not yet, and he fears he won't be able to protect his people when the time comes. The next morning, he sneaks out of the mansion wearing a cloak and wanders the village market. Even in disguise, people still recognize him. One woman mistakes him for a noble lady out shopping. Ars fat-shames her under his breath and moves on. He starts scanning people with his magic eye, searching for hidden talent, but all he finds are nobodies, useless commoners with no potential. Overusing the ability starts to strain his eyes, so he sits down to rest. Then, suddenly, shouting, a door slams open as a furious woman throws a young man into the street, screaming that she doesn't hire his kind. Ars watches in silence as the crowd mocks the boy, calling him a Malcolm. Curious, Ars recalls reading about this race, people brought from a faraway continent and enslaved by the Summerforth Empire. The young man sits in the dirt, starving and defeated. Ars walks over, pulls out some bread and offers it to him. The boy stares at it in disbelief before quietly accepting. "My name's Ray," he says. The bystanders whisper, confused why the future lord would help a filthy Malcolm. But Ars doesn't care. At first, Ray is skeptical. But Ray slowly takes the bread and starts eating it hungrily. While he eats, Ars activates his magic eye to check the man's stats, and what he sees shocks him. This guy is a total beast, multiple A and even S-rank abilities. His talent rivals that of Lord Raven, Ars's own powerful father. Ars realizes this man could one day become one of the strongest warriors in the entire kingdom. His eyes sparkle in excitement, while Ray just stares at him awkwardly before thanking him and walking away. Ars, however, isn't ready to let him go. He follows Ray into an alleyway. Annoyed, Ray tells him to leave him alone, but Ars finally reveals his identity. He's the son of Lord Lovent. Then he offers Ray a job as his personal bodyguard, tempting him with the promise of delicious meals. After some hesitation, Ray agrees, and they head back to Ars' mansion. At dinner, Ars sits at the table surrounded by lavish dishes, but when he looks at Ray, his smile fades. The racist maid has given Ray an old, dirty plate of beans. She insists that a Malcolm can't eat the same food as the future lord. The butler joins in, telling Ray to leave once he's done. Ars is disgusted by the blatant racism, but unlike the people around him, he actually does something about it. He drags his chair beside Ray and insists they eat together. When the staff tries to protest, Ars snaps at them to be quiet. Ray is his guest. The maid has no choice but to serve better food. Ray gratefully digs in, clearly overwhelmed. During dinner, Ray explains that he once worked with a band of mercenaries who raised him from childhood, but they were all killed in battle, leaving him alone in this cruel world. Ars feels deeply for him and takes him straight to his father's chamber. He declares that he wants to hire Ray as his bodyguard. Lord Lovent, however, takes one look at Ray and scoffs. "Malcolms are useless," he says coldly. "They have no real talent." Ars doesn't back down. He insists that his instincts are never wrong. Ray's power is real. His father, curious, agrees to test him. If Ray can land just one hit on him in combat, he'll be hired. If not, he must leave Lamberg immediately. The test begins. They step into the training yard as the guards gather, whispering racial slurs under their breath. Lord Lovent, wielding a wooden sword, lays out the rules. One clean hit is all Ray needs. The timer starts. Lovent moves first, a lightning-fast strike that Ray barely dodges. Even with a wooden sword, that blow could have killed him. The next attack comes harder. Ray blocks it, his arms trembling from the sheer force. Ars watches nervously, realizing just how terrifying his father's strength is. No one's ever lasted a single strike against him before, yet Ray is still standing. The two continue exchanging blows. Lovent's attacks are precise and powerful, but Ray's reflexes are sharp. He dodges, parries, and keeps his ground. The crowd watches in stunned silence. Finally, Lovent lands a clean hit to Ray's shoulder, knocking him down. But to everyone's amazement, Ray gets back up. His expression hardens. It's time to fight seriously. He charges forward, slides beneath Lovent's stance, and uses the sun's reflection to blind him for just a moment. Taking advantage of the opening, he swings for a hit, but Lovent blocks it at the last second. Still, no one has ever come that close before. Just as Ray is about to go again, Lovent calls out, "Time's up." But instead of dismissing him, he smirks. "You pass." For the first time, someone had nearly landed a hit on the Lord of Lamberg. Ars is overjoyed, congratulating Ray while Lovent praises his son for spotting true talent. The soldiers crowd around Ray, begging him for tips and asking to train together. Later that day, Ray is officially accepted into the household. He kneels before Ars, swearing loyalty to him for life. Months pass, and Ray quickly earns everyone's respect. At first, the staff's racism made his days miserable, but his humble attitude and strength slowly changed their hearts. Now, they admire him. Ray trains the soldiers daily, improving their combat techniques. He also studies under Ars's tutor, and his intelligence skyrockets. Before long, he becomes one of the most capable men in the entire estate. Even the maids who once hated him start to blush around him. Ray and Ars often study together, diving deep into the history and politics of their world. They learn that the Summerforth Kingdom, once a mighty empire, has fallen into decline. The old king is dead, and his son, just 8 years old, now sits on the throne. But in truth, all power lies in the hands of corrupt politicians manipulating the boy king for their own gain. as much power as possible. Because of all this, the government has become unable to rule properly. This has led to several revolts breaking out across the country. As a result, the lords and dukes of these regions have started ignoring the central authority, maintaining their own personal armies to handle the conflicts. Ars realizes that their own county has seen no revolts so far, but the fact that his father keeps training every day and preparing to gather more soldiers must mean that conflict could arise soon. He decides to find more talented people like Ray who could help in case a war breaks out, even though he hopes it never will. Ars asks Ray where he thinks the war would start if it were to happen. Without hesitation, Ray replies that it would likely begin in the neighboring county. The lord there is old and fragile. He could die any day now, and when that happens, the conflict over succession will probably start. Ray explains that the old lord has 2 sons. Technically, the older one should inherit the title, but everyone knows the younger son is far more capable and would make a better ruler. If the matter of succession isn't resolved before the lord dies, both brothers will likely fight each other, forcing the entire kingdom to pick sides. Ars then asks which side his own father would support. Ray answers that they would probably side with the elder brother, since by law he is the rightful heir. Ars starts thinking about how his father can handle these issues for now, but he worries about what might happen if something goes wrong and his father gets hurt. Ray advises him to keep an eye out for talented individuals who could strengthen their position and ensure safety. Ars agrees wholeheartedly, and the 2 of them prepare to head to the nearby town to scout for potential allies. As they walk through the front yard, Raven stops them and reminds them to look for a good mage. A skilled wizard, he says, can turn the tide of a losing battle. Ars knows his father has no magical talent. He once gave Ars a magical gem to awaken his own powers, but nothing happened. Since then, his father never brought it up again. They leave their small county and travel to the nearby town, which is much larger and wealthier than their home. Ars looks around in amazement, admiring the busy streets and fine buildings. He tells Ray that he wants his own county to become like this one day. Ray simply smiles as Ars begins searching for talented people among the locals. Unfortunately, no one stands out. Everyone seems to have average or below average abilities, and Ars soon grows tired and sits down. Ray reassures him, saying that since this town has around 50,000 people, 10 times more than their village, they'll definitely find someone sooner or later. As they continue walking through the wide streets, Ars notices a small dingy alley where several poor people are sleeping on the ground. He's shocked. He didn't expect a city filled with wealthy people to have such poverty. Ray gives him a life lesson. Every place with great wealth also has deep poverty. Ars begins to rethink his dream of turning his hometown into a city like this. Later, they reach the main market, where Ars is instantly captivated by the countless goods being sold. Suddenly, he hears a merchant claiming to sell dragon eggs imported from another continent. Excited, Ars immediately wants to buy one, imagining himself riding a dragon whenever he pleases. He asks the merchant for the price, and with a sly smile, the man says he'll sell the rare eggs for only 1 silver each. Ars, overjoyed, offers to buy 3 and starts digging through his bag for coins. But before he can pay, Ray shoves him back and presses a dagger to the seller's throat. He accuses the merchant of trying to sell counterfeit goods to a noble, a crime punishable by death. The merchant insists he's done nothing wrong, but Ray points out that the import of foreign goods has been banned for over a year. That means these eggs are either fake or smuggled illegally. He also notes how absurd it is that a lowly street vendor could have so many dragon eggs in the first place. Ray prepares to eliminate the man, but Ars quickly stops him, pulling him back to his senses. Ray immediately apologizes and offers to accept any punishment, but Ars tells him not to worry. Later, while they're having lunch, Ars decides to buy some dessert from a nearby stall. But before he can take a bite, a pickpocket runs into him, snatches his pouch of money, and bolts through the crowd. Ray grabs Ars and sprints after the thief, weaving through the busy market. He finally manages to snatch the thief's cloak, revealing a young blue-haired girl. She dashes into an alley, but when Ray catches up, he finds her cornered by a group of thugs. One of them punches her to the ground. Ars tries to stop them, but their leader turns on him, ready to attack. Before he can land a hit, Ray grabs the man's arm and punches him in the gut, knocking him out cold. The other 2 rush forward, but Ray quickly takes them down as well, leaving all 3 sprawled on the ground. forcing them to run away, Ars looks at the girl through his magic eye. And to his astonishment, it reveals that she possesses S-rank magic skills. He can't believe what he's seeing. Her magical stats are unbelievable. Without hesitation, he asks her to join him as his vassal. Ray warns him that she's a thief, but Ars doesn't care. He promises her a comfortable life, with proper food and a salary. The girl looks down at him with disdain and says she'd rather die than serve some spoiled noble child. In her eyes, all nobles are greedy monsters who fill their coffers at the expense of the poor. She reveals that she herself had once been enslaved by a noble and only recently escaped, which is why those men were chasing her. Ars tries to reason with her, saying she'd make an incredible mage, but the girl insists she's never even used magic before. Seeing it's pointless, Ray tells her to just return the stolen pouch, which she does without protest. Suddenly, a group of small children rushes into the alley and huddles around the girl. Ars realizes she's been taking care of these orphans, feeding and protecting them. Feeling guilty, he gives her the pouch of money and walks away with Ray as the evening sky fades into night. Later, Ars sits on the balcony, thinking about whether he'll ever find someone with such talent again. Suddenly, they hear children crying and screaming for help. The kids shout that Char, the blue-haired thief, has been taken away by 3 men. Meanwhile, Char has been dragged to the other side of the city. The goons throw her down in front of a slave trader and start beating her. She endures every hit silently, refusing to cry. The slaver warns them to be careful with her face. A perverted noble is paying a high price for her, and he wants her face kept pretty. One of the thugs notices the pouch Ars gave her and grabs it. When he opens it, he finds it full of silver coins. Char suddenly lunges, snatches it back and makes a desperate run for it. But the men are faster. They catch her again and pin her to the ground. The slaver tells her to accept her fate. Even if she escapes, he says, she'll live a life of endless running and die miserably. Before he can break her spirit further, the door slams open violently, knocking down the guard beside it. Ray storms in, blocking the first attack and taking down the next 2 men with effortless precision. With a swift throw of his knife, he hits another standing beside the trader. The slaver quickly shouts for everyone to stop so they can talk. Just then, Ars runs into the room and rushes to Char's side, asking if she's all right. Char stares at him in shock. She never expected him to come. The slaver sizes up Ars and realizes he must be a noble, judging from his clothes and manner of speech. Calmly, he asks what the boy wants. Ars declares that he wants the girl released immediately. The slaver laughs and says he can't do that. He's done nothing illegal. Slave trading, he explains smugly, is perfectly legal in this county. Ars doesn't care about laws or loopholes. Before he can argue further, Char weakly tells him to run away if he wants to live. Ars looks back at her and checks her stats again. He sees that her ambition is listed as none, meaning she's completely lost hope for any future. He starts speaking passionately, saying that every person deserves to have hope, a future to look forward to. The slaver finds this hilarious, laughing that the only future a slave can hope for is to serve a kind master. Angered, Ars yells at him to stop. Adults, he says, are supposed to protect children, not destroy their lives. It's up to Char to decide her own fate, not scum like him. Char is deeply moved by his words. She can't remember the last time she cried. She'd grown up on the streets, surviving storms and winters in dark alleys, watching others live better lives. She had to steal just to stay alive, and no matter how hard she tried, she could barely feed herself, let alone the children she protected. Watching someone finally stand up for her brings tears to her eyes. The slaver's patience runs out. He says he was speaking respectfully because Ars is a noble, but now the boy is meddling in business he doesn't understand, acting too righteous for his age. A group of armed thugs comes down the stairs, surrounding Ars and Ray. The slaver threatens to hurt them if they don't leave. Ars simply looks at Ray, who tells him calmly not to worry. Everything is under control. One of the goons sneers at Ars, telling him to shut up. Ray grabs the man by the throat, lifts him into the air and slams him to the ground. "You just made a huge mistake," he says coldly, insulting Lord Ars, "and now you'll pay the price, with your life." He draws his dagger as one thug breaks a bottle and orders the others to surround him. But it's useless. Ray moves like lightning, dodging every blow with effortless precision. He slashes 2 of them across the abdomen, then throws his knife straight into another's chest. Before he can continue, one of the goons grabbed Ray from behind with a knife, but Ray simply slammed him to the ground, scaring the slaver. In a panic, the slaver called for the mages. The two mages immediately began chanting their basic fire spells and fired them at Ray. He easily sliced through their magic and beat the crap out of them as well. Terrified, the slaver finally called for his trump card. A massive man who came stomping down from upstairs, chugging ale straight from the bottle. As he reached the bottom of the stairs, the man demanded to know what all the noise was about. The slaver quickly explained the situation, which only made the man angrier. Char leaned toward Ars and whispered that this guy was serious trouble, that he should run away, but Ars checked his stats and smirked, telling her it should be an easy match. And just as he said, Ray easily dodged the first attack by swinging from the chandelier, then jumped down and kicked the man square in the face. Furious, the giant charged at him again, but Ray was too fast and too skilled. With a clean uppercut to the chin, he ended the fight instantly, knocking the brute out cold. The slaver, now trembling, warned them that what they were doing was illegal. Ars calmly took out a pouch filled with coins and told him he'd buy the girl. The slaver claimed she had already been sold to another noble, but Ray stepped in, glaring, and told him they were taking the girl anyway. He could either accept the money or stay penniless and deal with that other noble himself. At that threat, the slaver folded and took the money, legally transferring Char's ownership to Ars. By the time they left the office, the sun was already rising. Before heading off, Char said she wanted to show them something. She led them up a hill where Ars struggled to climb, but finally reached the summit, only to be greeted by the most breathtaking view of the town below. Char smiled and said this was her secret place, where she came whenever she felt down. She wanted to share it as a token of gratitude. Iris admired the view, while Ray handed Char a magic locket to test her abilities. She hesitated, warning them that she had never tried magic before and doubted she even had any. But the moment she chanted a spell, an enormous surge of mana exploded from her body, forming a huge fireball that lit up the sky. Everyone in town, including Ars and Ray, stood speechless. Later, Char reunited with the orphan kids and promised to visit them soon before departing with Ars and Ray back to his home. When they arrived, Ars introduced Char to his father, who at first thought Ars had just brought home a new dishwasher. Ars insisted she was an exceptional mage who'd be invaluable on the battlefield. His father scoffed, saying women belonged in kitchens, not in wars. To prove him wrong, Char unleashed a massive fire blast into the sky, stunning Raven, who immediately changed his tune and welcomed her into the Luvent family. They all went inside, ready for whatever adventures awaited them next. 3 years later, Char had grown into a beautiful and formidable woman, one of the strongest mages on the battlefield. Raven had led multiple successful battles thanks to her and his brilliant tactics. Despite the continent being constantly at war, morale remained high in their territory. Char's power had impressed everyone so much that Raven began recruiting more mages under her training to strengthen their army. Ars now had 2 younger siblings, twins, a boy and a girl, both showing early signs of incredible talent. Still, Ars continued searching for new talent. One day, Ray informed him about 2 highly skilled hunter brothers living deep in the forest. Excited, Ars decided they should go and check them out. Soon after, he and Ray headed into the forest to find the hunter's hut. On their way, they were stopped by Char, sitting on a tree branch casually eating a sandwich. Ars told her about the hunters, and she decided to join them as his escort, to keep him safe. Of course, she made sure he was extra protected, squeezing him tightly between her arms like human airbags. Ray, feeling jealous, joked that maybe she should walk instead since the horse was struggling under the weight. Char snapped back that she'd been fighting wars and winning them, so he should show her some respect. As they bickered, the bushes nearby rustled. A wild boar burst out, scaring the horse, but before it could do any harm, an arrow pierced through it. Moments later, 2 men emerged from the thicket celebrating their kill, until they noticed the unexpected guests watching them. They immediately rushed over to the two hunters, asking if they were all right, explaining they hadn't realized anyone else was nearby. Ars introduced himself and asked if they were the Hunter brothers who had recently moved into the area. The brothers nodded, saying they had indeed moved here not long ago. Curious, Ars used his ability to check their stats and was pleasantly surprised. Their numbers were well above average. Nothing legendary, but solid enough to impress him. The brothers then invited the group back to their home, where their father welcomed them warmly. He served a generous spread of fresh meat from their latest hunt, apologizing that it might not be enough since he hadn't known the Lord's son would visit. Ars smiled kindly and assured him it was more than enough, while Char wasted no time digging into the food with enthusiasm. As they ate, the father asked what brought Ars there. Ars explained that he'd heard tales of his son's impressive hunting skills and had come to see for himself. After assessing them, Ars told the father he wanted to recruit them into the Lovent County Army. Their skills could be a great asset. The man was stunned and overjoyed, unable to believe his sons might become high-ranking soldiers. While Ars continued the conversation, Char noticed a small boy sneaking a piece of bread and trying to run off quietly. His father caught him and scolded him, telling him to introduce himself properly. At first, Ars didn't think much of it, but something about the boy's behavior made him curious. He decided to check his stats, and what he saw left him speechless. The child had over 100 intellect and an S-rank tactician skill. Ars nearly choked on his drink, coughing in shock. A mind that sharp was unheard of. He doubted anyone in the entire kingdom could match such intelligence. The father, embarrassed, apologized and said that unlike his older brothers, Rose was clumsy and not good at much. But Ars's eyes lit up. He knew this boy was special. He told the father that he wanted Rose to become his vassal. The entire family was stunned. The father quickly asked Ars to reconsider, insisting Rose would just be a burden. But Ars approached the boy with excitement and gently asked if he would like to become his vassal and work for him. Rose's eyes filled with fear. He thought they were trying to force him into battle, so he started crying and refused, saying he would just die easily. His father scolded him for speaking that way to a noble, but Rose bolted into his room and locked the door. Ars sighed. Rejection again. The father apologized, explaining that since Rose's mother had died, he'd shut himself off from the world. He never practiced archery or woodcutting like his brothers, and spent most of his time alone in his room. But Ars shook his head. "Physical strength isn't everything," he said. He might not be like his brothers, but his intelligence is off the charts. He could become an extraordinary tactician. Ars was determined to try again. He went to Rose's room and found him sitting on the floor, reading a book. The moment Rose saw him, he began crying again. Ars quickly assured him that he wasn't going to hurt him, then gently asked if he liked reading. Rose nodded and explained that his mother used to read that very book to him. It was the only one they had, so he read it whenever he missed her. Smiling, Ars decided to sweeten the offer. He told the boy that he had a giant library back home, filled with every book imaginable. Rose's eyes lit up with curiosity. He hesitated, then asked if he'd be allowed to take one book for himself. Ars agreed without hesitation. Later that day, they returned to the mansion with the three brothers. Rose stayed quiet, hiding behind Ars, and even started crying again when another boy tried to play with him. Ars asked Char to show the older brothers around while he took Rose to the library. The moment Rose entered, his eyes widened in awe at the endless rows of books. He eagerly began pulling volumes off the shelves, flipping through them with fascination. Ars told him he needed to study as well and that they'd meet up later. A few hours passed. Ars woke up from an unplanned nap at his desk, panicking that Rose might have run away. But when he rushed back to the library, he found the boy fast asleep on the floor, surrounded by piles of open books. Ray appeared and whispered that the boy was remarkable, learning new words instantly and thinking in surprisingly complex ways. Ars checked his stats again and was stunned to see they had already improved. Soon, the older brothers arrived and started teasing Rose for being buried in books, saying he couldn't even read them properly. Ars frowned, confused, and asked what they meant. The hunters explained that, apart from their late mother, no one in the family could read or write. She used to tell Rose stories but never taught him how to read. Rose slowly woke up as Ars stared at him, realizing just how gifted the boy truly was. Ars looked at Rose curiously. "How did you learn to read?" he asked. Rose replied softly, "I learned by listening to my mother read aloud and matching her words to the shapes on the page." Everyone froze in shock. The older brothers stared at him, wide-eyed. "But you were only 2 years old back then." One of them blurted out, "How could you possibly remember that?" Rose hesitated, then quietly dropped a bombshell. "I remember everything," he said. "From the day I was born." The room fell silent. Even Ars didn't know what to say. The next day, Ars decided to help boost Rose's confidence. He told him that hunting wasn't just about archery. There were other ways, like setting traps. Rose admitted that he had thought about it before, but never had the courage to try. "Then try it now," Ars encouraged him. "You've got nothing to lose." Later that day, Rose's father arrived in the forest and was stunned. In the middle of the clearing stood a massive, well-constructed trap filled with several wild boars already caught inside. His older sons were practically bouncing with excitement as they shouted, "Rose built this all by himself." Rose explained proudly how he did it. He discovered that male boars were provoked by the color yellow, so he painted the door of the trap that color, causing them to charge and get stuck. He also hung a special herb around the perimeter, one whose scent female boars and piglets disliked. That way, only the males would get caught, preventing overhunting and keeping the boar population stable. He looked at his father eagerly, waiting for praise. But his father said nothing. His silence stung more than any scolding could. That night, Rose sat alone in his room, tears streaming down his face. He blamed himself for his mother's death, believing that her illness after childbirth was his fault. As he sobbed quietly, he overheard voices outside. His father and brothers had climbed up to the roof to share drinks. The older brothers finally asked what Rose had always wanted to know. "Why are you so harsh with him, father?" There was a long pause before the man answered, his voice trembling. "It's my fault," he admitted. "I was always strict with him because he wasn't good at hunting. But truth is, I'm being cold to him now because I want him to hate me." His voice broke. "If he hates me, maybe he'll find the strength to leave, to go with Lord Ars, where his talents will be appreciated. He deserves a better life than this." Tears rolled down Rose's cheeks as he listened. For the first time, he realized that his father's harshness came from love. The next morning, Ars came to pick up the brothers, assuming Rose wouldn't come. But to his surprise, the little boy came running out of the house, a huge travel bag on his back. He looked up at his father with teary eyes and said, "I could never hate you, Dad. I'll become a great man, and when I do, I'll come back. We'll live together again, happily." His father couldn't hold back his tears. The brothers placed their hands over their hearts and swore loyalty to the young lord, pledging to serve him faithfully. And so, with hearts full of hope and tears of farewell, Ars and his new vassals set off, ready for the adventures that awaited them.